All right, let's jump right into this. Picture this. You're lying in bed, the lights are completely off, but the meeting in your head, oh, it is just getting started. Maybe an event from earlier in the day is just playing on a loop, or maybe you're already vividly imagining the spectacular failure of a project that, honestly, hasn't even happened yet. Your body is resting, but your mind is running an absolute marathon. Look, it's a mental exhaustion we are all far too familiar with. So, in this explainer, we are going to explore a highly practical, surprisingly grounded antidote to this modern epidemic of overthinking. We're looking at a framework that literally teaches us how to stop suffering twice.
Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating book called The Yaudah Principle in Life by Didik Aguste. Now, if you don't know, the word Yaudah is just an everyday Indonesian expression. It loosely translates to, oh well, or so be it. And normally, you'd use it when you just want to give up or, drop a subject. But the author does something brilliant here. He reclaims that word and transforms it into a highly disciplined psychological framework. He takes actionable, scientifically backed psychology, blends it with some deep spiritual concepts, and creates a system to help us win back our mental energy.
So here is our mental map for today's explainer. We'll start with the overthinking trap, unlock the two Yaudah questions, and then explore three distinct paths: gratitude, action, and acceptance. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with a stabilizing spiritual anchor. Okay, Section 1, the overthinking trap. Why does everyday life sometimes just feel so impossibly heavy?
This idea of suffering twice is captured perfectly in this quote from the text. The author shares a really relatable anecdote. Imagine a professional who gets 10 pieces of feedback after a big presentation. 9 of those are absolute, glowing compliments, but one is a sharp, critical comment. What happens? You already know. By the end of the day, those 9 compliments have completely vanished from memory. But that one sharp comment, it follows them home, pulls up a chair at the dinner table, and literally goes to bed with them. The actual event happened exactly once, but the mind manufactured the suffering 100 times over.
And this brings us to a huge core philosophy we need to adopt. We have to separate facta from charita, the fact from the story. The fact is just what objectively happened. The story, on the other hand, is that thick layer of assumptions, future projections, and anxieties our mind aggressively pastes over the fact. Blurring these two constantly drains our attention, leading to what psychologists call decision fatigue. Think of your attention as a strict daily budget. When you spend it endlessly spinning stories out of simple facts, you have absolutely nothing left in the tank for the decisions that actually matter. Section 2, the two Yaudah questions. So how do we actually break this loop? Well, when the mind gets noisy, this framework asks us to pause and deploy 2 specific filters. Question number 1. Is there actually a problem? And this requires brutal objectivity. Remember that difference between fact and story? You have to ask yourself if there is a factual, concrete issue sitting right in front of you, or if your mind is just creating drama out of thin air. It's all about verifying reality before you react to it.
Now, if you objectively answer yes to that first question, you immediately move to the second filter. If there is a problem, can I do something about it? This completely shifts the brain's focus. Instead of spinning endlessly in circles with what-ifs and all these hypothetical disasters, you are forcing your brain to identify actionable reality. You're demanding a pivot from rumination straight into agency. And from those 2 simple questions, we arrive at this beautiful rule of 3. Depending on your answers, your mental energy is directed down one of 3 very specific paths. Syukri, which is practicing gratitude, usahakan, which means taking action, or ikhlasakan, which is practicing acceptance. You choose exactly one path. Let's break each of these down.
Section 3, Path 1, Gratitude or Syukri. You take this path when the answer to your first filter question is, no, actually, there isn't a problem.
This framework completely redefines gratitude. The source states, and I love this, we don't lack blessings, we just have too many comparisons. Imagine someone who absolutely loves their home, right? Until they scroll online, see a friend's massive new house, and suddenly they feel miserable. No new problem actually entered their life. Literally only their standard of comparison changed. So this path isn't about toxic positivity, faking a smile when things are genuinely terrible. Not at all. It is a highly disciplined reorientation of your attention. It's recognizing that the human brain is hardwired to detect threats and flaws, and actively correcting that bias to stop creating problems where absolutely none exist.
Section 4, Path 2, Action or usahakan. This path is strictly for situations where a problem is real and you actually have the power to intervene.
The success of this path relies entirely on a psychological concept known as the locus of control, pioneered by Julian Rotter back in the 1960s. We often drive ourselves totally crazy trying to control the outcome of an event. But let's be real, the outcome is rarely fully in our hands. An athlete can't control the final score on the board, but they can completely control their training process. A manager can't mind control their team, but they can control the clarity of their own instructions. By shifting our focus entirely away from the outcome, which we can't control, and pouring that energy into our own process, which we can, anxiety drastically shrinks.
The source gives us some excellent micro-scenarios for executing this. Say a project is stalling and the team is just sitting around worrying. The framework says, stop repeating the worry. Find the 5-minute action. Can you make a single phone call? Can you write a quick 3-line email? A tiny 5-minute action breaks the paralysis of overthinking. It just gets you moving. And most importantly, taking an action generates new data, which changes the landscape of the problem entirely. You move out of the realm of thought and into the realm of momentum.
Section 5, Path 3, Acceptance, or Ikhlaskan. Now this one is reserved for the hardest situations, when a problem is painfully real, but it resides entirely outside your sphere of control.
And this part brilliantly illustrates how psychology tackles the concept of letting go. The author draws on research regarding cognitive reappraisal and therapies like acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. Look, acceptance does not mean you approve of what happened. It definitely doesn't mean you're happy about a lost contract or a broken relationship. It simply means you stop violently fighting the facts. You stop screaming, "This shouldn't be happening," at reality. By changing how you interpret the situation, you stop wasting your limited energy on a mental war you literally cannot win. And you free that energy up to figure out your very next step. I am a huge fan of this punchy takeaway from the text. Criticism is data. Think about it. When we fail or when people criticize us, we tend to absorb it straight into our identity, right? We say, "I am a failure." But the Yaudah framework teaches us to reframe that entirely. The criticism, the failure, it's just data. It's objective feedback about an event, not a permanent verdict on your value as a human being. Recognizing that difference, that is what allows us to finally drop the emotional baggage and just use the data to improve. Section 6, the spiritual anchor. We've explored the psychological how, but this final section gives us the deeply grounding why. The author brilliantly contrasts two spiritual concepts here to build a complete picture: ikhtiyar and tawakkul. Ikhtiyar is your effort. It's the work of your hands and your mind. It's doing everything in your power to solve a problem. But tawakkul is surrender. It is the position of the heart after you have done your part. And these are not opposites, not at all. They're two halves of a peaceful mindset. You act with intense dedication, and then you completely surrender the outcome, recognizing it was never yours to dictate in the first place. The ultimate takeaway from this spiritual anchor is the philosophy of qadar, or destiny. It is a profound recognition of our own limits. And this is vital because it protects us on both ends of the spectrum. When we succeed, recognizing our limits prevents deep arrogance, because we know for a fact we didn't control all the variables. And when we fail, it prevents crushing despair, because we know we only ever had power over our own effort, not the final result. True peace is found right there, exactly at the boundary of our control.
Well, this brings us to the end of our explainer, but really, it's just the beginning of your practice. I want to leave you with this question. Look at a current stressor in your life right now. Run it through the 2 Yaudah filters. Is it a real problem? Can you control it? Now tell me, which of the 3 paths, gratitude, action, or acceptance, do you need to choose today to reclaim your peace of mind? Think about it, and we will catch you in the next explainer.